Welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now let's dive into today's story. The gleaming Ferrari F8 Tributo's engine purred as Max Stevenson guided it through the rain-slicked streets of downtown Boston. The leather steering wheel felt butter-soft beneath his calloused hands, and the scent of rich leather filled his nostrils. 5 years ago, he would have felt out of place in such luxury. Now, it was just another prop in his elaborate performance. His phone buzzed against the leather seat. Agent Theodore McCarthy's name flashed across the screen, causing Max's jaw to tighten. He let it ring through to voicemail, focusing instead on the upcoming turn into Elite Velocity's private garage. The automated gate recognized his vehicle's transponder and slid open silently. As he pulled into his designated spot, his real phone, the burner tucked into his boot, vibrated. His handler, Lucia Bennett. Stevenson, he answered quietly, eyes scanning the dimly lit garage. We got a problem? Lucia's voice was tense. McCarthy's making moves. He's frozen your bureau accounts. Max's fingers drummed against the steering wheel. He can't do that without. He got approval from upstairs. Claims he has evidence you've gone native. A bitter laugh escaped Max's lips. Evidence? Let me guess. All circumstantial. The Ferrari you're sitting in probably doesn't help your case, Lucia said dryly. Listen, Clay Line is fighting this, but McCarthy's got momentum. He's been building a case for months. The sound of another vehicle entering the garage caught Max's attention. Through his rearview mirror, he watched Victor Browning's matte black Lamborghini Huracan glide into its space. I've got to go. Browning just pulled in. Max. Lucia's voice dropped lower. Be careful. McCarthy's not just looking to end the operation. He wants to prove you've crossed over. Don't give him anything he can use. The call ended just as Victor Browning's passenger door opened. Max's heart nearly stopped when his wife Chris stepped out, her red cocktail dress catching the fluorescent lighting. She was laughing at something Browning had said, her hand lingering on his arm longer than any wife's hand should on another man's. Max forced himself to remain in the car, maintaining his cover even as his stomach churned. This wasn't the first time he'd seen them together, but it never got easier. The quiet accountant he'd married had transformed over the past year, drawn into Elite Velocity's orbit like a moth to a flame. Max! Browning's voice boomed across the garage. You're early, my friend. Already eager for tonight's race? Max stepped out of the Ferrari, plastering on the easy smile he'd perfected over months of undercover work. You know me, Victor. I like to get a feel for the weather conditions. Browning approached with the confident stride of a man who owned not just the building, but everyone in it. His tailored suit probably cost more than most FBI agents made in a month. Chris followed a step behind, her eyes meeting Max's with a practiced neutrality that made him wonder how much of their marriage had ever been real. Darling, she said, crossing to kiss his cheek. Her perfume, something new and expensive, filled his senses. I didn't expect to see you here so early. Clearly, Max replied, keeping his tone light despite the double meaning. He turned to Browning. Victor, that new Huracan is something else. Custom work? Browning's eyes lit up. Just got her back from the shop. Want to take a look under the hood? As they moved toward the Lamborghini, Max's burner phone felt like it was burning a hole in his boot. Somewhere in this building was the truth about his brother Corey's disappearance 5 years ago. The official investigation had been shut down so abruptly that Max had spent years pulling strings to get this undercover assignment. Beautiful machine, Max commented, studying the engine while his mind raced through the implications of McCarthy's latest move. With his bureau accounts frozen, he'd be forced to rely entirely on his undercover identity's resources. Exactly the kind of behavior McCarthy would use to prove his corruption. Speaking of beautiful, Browning said, closing the hood, Chris tells me your anniversary is coming up next month. I know this fantastic jeweler in Dubai. Very exclusive. I can make a call? Max felt Chris's eyes on him, watching his reaction. That's generous, Victor. But you know me. I prefer to handle personal matters personally. Browning laughed, clapping him on the shoulder. Always so independent. It's what I like about you, Max. You're not like these other trust fund babies who need daddy's approval for everything. You understand the value of making your own way. If only you knew, Max thought, remembering the cramped apartment where he and Corey had grown up. The real Max Stevenson hadn't been born into wealth. He'd built this persona from scratch, layering truth and fiction until even he sometimes had trouble separating them. The elevator dinged, and Judge Elmer Waller stepped out, his judicial robes replaced by an expensive casual suit. The judge's presence here, in what was essentially a high-end chop shop, never ceased to amaze Max. "Gentlemen," Waller nodded, then smiled warmly at Chris. "Mrs. Stevenson, lovely as always. I trust those financial reports are coming along?" "Just finished them this morning, Judge," Chris replied professionally. "You'll have them on your desk first thing tomorrow." Max filed away this interaction, another piece in the puzzle he was slowly assembling. His wife's accounting firm handled books for several elite Velocity members, including Judge Waller. It was a connection that had existed before Max's undercover assignment, one that had initially helped him get close to the organization. "Max," Waller turned to him, "I heard about your performance in last week's race. Impressive handling on that mountain curve." "Just lucky," Max shrugged, though there had been nothing lucky about it. That race had been carefully calculated, good enough to maintain his cover, not so good as to draw unwanted attention. Browning checked his watch. "We should head upstairs. The others will be arriving soon for the briefing." As they walked toward the elevator, Max felt his burner phone vibrate again. He'd check it later when he could get a moment alone. Right now, he needed to focus on maintaining his cover, especially with McCarthy breathing down his neck. The elevator ride was silent, filled with the kind of comfortable quiet that came from people who thought they knew each other well. Max stood behind Chris, catching her reflection in the polished doors. For a moment, their eyes met in the reflection, and he saw something flicker across her face. Regret? Warning? Before he could analyze it, the doors opened to Elite Velocity's main floor. The club's headquarters occupied the entire top floor of the building. A row of monitors displayed various racetracks and vehicle specifications. To anyone else, it looked like a legitimate luxury car club. But Max knew better. Behind those screens lay one of the most sophisticated criminal operations he'd ever encountered. As he followed the others into the main room, Max thought about Corey. His brother had disappeared without a trace 5 years ago. The investigation suddenly shut down with no explanation. Now, Max was closer than ever to the truth. But with McCarthy threatening to blow his cover and his own wife seemingly involved with the organization, time was running out. The weight of his FBI badge, hidden in a secret compartment in his jacket, seemed to grow heavier with each step. Somewhere in this building was the truth about Corey. And no matter what it cost him, his career, his marriage, even his life, Max was going to find it. Victor Browning's office resembled a museum of automotive history, with scale models of classic cars arranged meticulously on glass shelves. Max stood, pretending to admire the view, while actually studying the reflection of the room behind him. "The Jensen account is our priority this week," Browning was saying, addressing the small group of Elite Velocity's inner circle. "Their new autonomous vehicle program has certain features we find interesting." Max noticed Judge Waller shift uncomfortably in his leather chair. The judge's presence at these meetings still struck him as brazen, even after months of witnessing it. Victor, a tall woman in a sharp business suit, interrupted. "My sources say Jensen's firewalls are practically impenetrable." "Nothing's impenetrable, Diana." Browning smiled, the kind of smile that made Max's law enforcement instincts tingle, especially when you have friends in high places. "Isn't that right, Elmer?" Judge Waller cleared his throat. "The Jensen case comes before my court next week. A routine patent dispute, nothing more." "Of course," Browning nodded, but his eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction. "Just like last month's tech startup litigation was routine. Amazing how many companies are willing to share their secrets once they realize how expensive legal battles can be." Max filed away this interaction, his mind already composing his next report to Lucia. Elite Velocity wasn't just stealing cars. They were orchestrating a sophisticated corporate espionage operation, with Judge Waller's courtroom serving as their pressure point. The meeting continued, But Max's attention was drawn to his phone, vibrating silently in his pocket. A text from an unknown number. Need to talk about CM urgent. MW. Marina Wood. His brother's old girlfriend, now a detective. Max's pulse quickened, but he kept his expression neutral. Any reaction could give him away to the dozen pairs of eyes that regularly studied him for signs of disloyalty. Max! Browning's voice cut through his thoughts. You're unusually quiet tonight. Just thinking about the Jensen job, Max replied smoothly. Their facility security isn't just digital. We'll need a detailed plan for the physical extraction. Browning's face lit up. Always the tactical one. That's why we need you on this. Max, speaking of which, Chris mentioned you two might be free for dinner this weekend. The casual mention of his wife sent a jolt through Max's system. After the meeting, he needed to check her work computer. The encrypted files he'd discovered last week had been weighing on his mind. I'll have to check with her, Max replied diplomatically. She's been busy with the quarter-end reports. The meeting wrapped up shortly after, with various members breaking into smaller groups to discuss their assignments. Max made his way to the elevator, but Judge Waller caught up with him. Max, the judge said quietly, a word. They stepped into the judge's private office, a space that screamed old money with its dark wood paneling and leather-bound law books. Max had been here before, but something felt different tonight. Waller seemed nervous, his usually steady hands slightly trembling as he poured 2 glasses of scotch. Your wife, Waller began, handing Max a glass. She's quite talented with numbers. She is, Max agreed, not touching the drink. Your books must keep her busy. Among others, Waller sat behind his desk, his expression unreadable. I've known Chris longer than you have, you know. She did some work for me back when she was fresh out of college. This was news to Max, is that right? Indeed. Douglas Kennedy recommended her. Fine agent, Douglas was, before he moved on to better opportunities. The mention of Kennedy, McCarthy's former partner, set off alarm bells in Max's head. Another connection he hadn't known about. Another thread in this increasingly tangled web. Speaking of opportunities, Waller continued, I'm concerned about some irregularities in recent transactions. Nothing major, you understand, but in my position, would you like me to have Chris review them? Max offered, watching the judge carefully. No. Waller's response came too quickly. He composed himself. No, that won't be necessary. I merely thought you should be aware, in case questions arise. After leaving Waller's office, Max made his way to his wife's workplace under the pretense of surprising her with dinner. The accounting firm occupied 3 floors in a nearby building, and Max had long since memorized the security patterns. The office was nearly empty at this hour. Max used his copy of Chris's key card, obtained months ago when his suspicions first arose, to access her office. The computer was locked, but Max hadn't spent 15 years in the FBI without learning a few tricks. Within minutes, he was in her system. The encrypted files were exactly where he'd found them before, but this time he came prepared. The decryption program Dustin Watkins had given him ran silently while Max kept watch. His phone buzzed again. Marina Wood was persistent. He typed a quick response, tomorrow. Usual place. The decryption program finished, and Max's blood ran cold as he read the contents. Account numbers, transaction records, shell companies, all dating back to before he'd even met Chris. But it was a photo buried in the files that made his hands shake. Chris and Douglas Kennedy at what appeared to be a college graduation ceremony, their smiles suggesting far more than a casual acquaintance. A noise in the hallway made Max quickly cover his tracks. He was about to leave when he noticed something odd about Chris's desk calendar. Next week showed a meeting with Judge Waller, but it was marked in a different color than her usual appointments. The sound of voices approaching forced Max to abandon his investigation. He slipped out through the back stairwell, his mind racing with questions. His wife's connection to Kennedy and Waller, the encrypted files, the timing of it all. It couldn't be coincidence. As he drove home in the Ferrari, Max's burner phone buzzed one final time. A message from Lucia. McCarthy's pushing for a formal investigation. Line stalling, but we're running out of time. Whatever you're going to find it fast. Max parked in his home garage, sitting in the car for a long moment. Through the kitchen, he could see Chris moving around, preparing dinner as if everything was normal. As if she hadn't spent the afternoon with Victor Browning. As if she hadn't been involved with Elite Velocity long before Max took his undercover assignment. Tomorrow, he would meet with Marina Wood and hopefully learn what she knew about Corey's disappearance. But tonight, he had to go inside and play the role of devoted husband, all while wondering if his wife was just as deep undercover as he was, but playing for the other side. The basement office of Dustin Watkins would have given any OSHA inspector a heart attack. Monitors covered every available surface, their blue light reflecting off empty energy drink cans and takeout containers. The tech specialist himself sat hunched over his primary keyboard, his fingers flying across the keys as data scrolled past. "You're not going to like this, Max," Dustin said, pushing his glasses up his nose. "These aren't just random car thefts. Look at the pattern." Max leaned closer, studying the complex web of data Dustin had assembled. Each stolen vehicle was represented by a dot, its movements tracked across a digital map of the eastern seaboard. The pattern was subtle, but once you saw it, it was unmistakable. "They're running a circuit," Max muttered. "Each car makes the same stops, following the race routes." "Exactly." Dustin pulled up another screen. But here's where it gets interesting. Each of these vehicles had custom modifications, specifically hidden compartments installed behind the dashboard. "Smuggling?" Max asked, though he already suspected there was more to it. "Not drugs or weapons." Dustin tapped a few keys, bringing up a series of photographs. "These compartments are climate-controlled, electromagnetically shielded. Perfect for transporting hard drives," Max finished. "They're moving data physically to avoid digital traces. Corporate secrets, blackmail material, financial records. Anything too sensitive to risk sending over the internet." Dustin looked pleased that Max had caught on. The street racing circuit isn't just a cover, it's the perfect delivery system. Who's going to look twice at luxury cars being transported between cities for races? Max's phone buzzed, another message from McCarthy, which he ignored. The internal affairs agent had been increasing his surveillance, making it harder for Max to operate freely. "There's something else," Dustin said hesitantly. "While I was digging through Elite Velocity server traffic, I found this." He pulled up a series of photographs on the central monitor. Max's breath caught in his throat. The images showed Judge Waller's private office, clearly taken without his knowledge. And there, pinned to a corkboard partially hidden behind a filing cabinet, were photos of Corey, photos dated months after his supposed disappearance. "These were taken from their security system," Dustin explained, his voice low despite the privacy of his basement office. "They're doing renovations on the 40th floor, and someone accidentally connected the construction crew's temporary cameras to the main network. I caught these before they realized their mistake." Max leaned in closer, studying his brother's face in the photographs. Corey looked thinner than he remembered, his usually cheerful expression replaced by something harder, more guarded. But he was alive, or at least had been when these pictures were taken. "Can you tell when exactly?" Max started, but was interrupted by a loud bang from upstairs. Dustin quickly killed the monitors. They heard heavy footsteps above, then voices. Through the basement's ancient heating vent, McCarthy's distinct voice carried clearly, "Search everything. Agent Stevenson's been accessing unauthorized systems." "How did they?" Dustin whispered, but Max was already moving. "Wipe everything," Max ordered quietly, heading for the basement's back exit, a remnant of the building's Prohibition-era history. "If they ask, I was never here." "Max," Dustin called softly, tossing him a small flash drive. "Everything I found is on here. But be careful. I'm not the only one watching the watchers." The drive felt impossibly heavy in Max's pocket as he slipped out into the alley. Rain had started falling again, providing cover as he made his way to where he'd parked the Ferrari 3 blocks away. Getting into a luxury sports car while trying to avoid attention wasn't easy, but Max had years of practice at balancing contradictions. His burner phone vibrated as he pulled into traffic. "Lucia. McCarthy just raided Watkins' place," she said without preamble. "Tell me you weren't there." "Define there," Max replied, checking his mirrors for tails. A black SUV turned onto the street behind him, its headlights off despite the rain. "Damn it, Max." Lucia's frustration was palpable. McCarthy's got surveillance photos of you entering the building. What were you thinking? I was thinking about finding my brother. Max took a sharp right turn, watching the SUV in his mirror. It followed. Lucia, I found something. Photos in Waller's office. Corey was alive months after he disappeared. There was a long pause. When Lucia spoke again, her voice was carefully controlled. Are you sure? Dated, time-stamped photos. And given how carefully they were hidden, they're probably real. The SUV was definitely following him now, joined by another. But we've got more immediate problems. I picked up 2 tails. McCarthy's people probably. Head to the safe house on Berkeley, Lucia instructed. Clay Lyon's there. He wants to talk. Max checked his mirrors again. The rain was coming down harder now, making the streets slick. Under normal circumstances, he could easily lose a tail in these conditions, but McCarthy's people were well trained. Plus, the Ferrari wasn't exactly inconspicuous. He was about to turn toward Berkeley Street when his personal phone rang, the one connected to his cover identity. Chris. Darling. Her voice was tense beneath its artificial sweetness. Are you near the club? Victor's calling an emergency meeting. Something about unexpected guests. Max's grip tightened on the steering wheel. The timing couldn't be coincidence. Unexpected guests? He wouldn't say more over the phone. But Max, she paused. Whatever you're doing, be careful. The weather's terrible for racing tonight. The warning in her voice was clear, though its intention wasn't. Was she trying to protect him? Or elite velocity? Tell Victor I'm on my way, Max said, making a decision. Instead of turning toward the safe house, he continued straight, heading for the club. In his mirrors, he saw one of the SUVs break off, while the other maintained its pursuit. His burner phone buzzed again. Lucia would be furious. But Max knew the raid on Dustin's place wasn't just about catching him accessing unauthorized systems. McCarthy was making a move, trying to force him into a mistake. And given what he'd just discovered about Corey, the timing was too perfect to be random. The Ferrari's engine roared as Max pressed the accelerator. Rain lashed against the windshield as he wove through traffic, his mind racing faster than the car. The photos in Waller's office, McCarthy's sudden aggression, Chris's warning. The pattern was emerging, but he still couldn't see the full picture. One thing was clear. Whatever elite velocity was planning, it was bigger than stolen cars and corporate espionage. And somewhere in the web of lies and betrayal surrounding him, his brother's fate was entangled with it all. The club's private garage loomed ahead, its entrance glowing like a beacon in the rainy darkness. As Max pulled in, he caught a glimpse of the SUV stopping across the street. McCarthy's people wouldn't risk following him inside. Elite Velocity security was too good, their influence too widespread. Max parked in his usual spot, taking a moment to compose himself. The flash drive from Dustin felt like it was burning a hole in his pocket. Upstairs, Victor Browning was waiting with his emergency meeting. Across the street, McCarthy's people were watching, and somewhere in this building were answers about Corey. Taking a deep breath, Max stepped out of the Ferrari. Whatever was waiting upstairs, he had to play his role perfectly. One wrong move now could unravel everything. His cover, his investigation, his chance to find Corey. As he walked toward the elevator, his footsteps echoing in the quiet garage, Max couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into a trap. But then again, he thought as the elevator doors closed behind him, sometimes the only way to spring a trap was to walk into it with your eyes wide open. Detective Marina Wood's office felt like a time capsule from the 1970s, all wood paneling and metal filing cabinets. She pulled a thick file from her desk drawer, her hands trembling slightly as she placed it in front of Max. I've been building this for 5 years, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ever since Corey. She cleared her throat. Ever since they shut down the official investigation. Max opened the file, his jaw tightening as he saw his brother's photo paper-clipped to the first page. Marina had been Corey's girlfriend when he disappeared, and she'd never accepted the official explanation. Look at the third page, she instructed, leaning forward. Max flipped through the documents until he found what she meant. His breath caught. There was Douglas Kennedy, younger and sporting a different haircut, but unmistakable. He was standing next to a much younger Chris at what appeared to be a college graduation ceremony. Where did you get this? Max asked, his voice carefully controlled. College yearbook. But that's not the important part. Marina pulled out another document. Kennedy was FBI then, working undercover in a campus drug investigation. And guess who his informant was? Max's eyes scanned the partially redacted report. Chris. She wasn't just his informant. She was his star player. Kennedy used her accounting skills to follow money trails, track transactions. When the investigation wrapped up, he helped her get a job at Morton & Price, her accounting firm. Max sat back, pieces clicking into place. The same firm that now handles books for elite Velocity members. Marina nodded, including Judge Waller. But here's where it gets worse. She pulled out another document, this one bearing the court seal. 5 years ago, just before Corey disappeared, Waller presided over a sealed case. The records were expunged, but what? I found this in the court reporter's archived notes. She slid over a single sheet of paper. It's fragmentary, but there's enough to suggest Corey was working as an informant. Against elite Velocity. Max's phone buzzed. A text from Lucia warning him that McCarthy was on the move again. He ignored it, focusing on the document in front of him. The timing fits, Marina continued. Corey started acting strange about 6 months before he disappeared. Nervous. He was working on some big software project, but wouldn't talk about it. Then suddenly he's gone. The investigation gets shut down, and Kennedy retires from the FBI to work private security for elite Velocity. And now he's partners with McCarthy, Max added, thinking of the internal affairs agent's relentless pursuit. Marina, this is a conspiracy that goes deeper than either of us imagined. She gave a bitter laugh. Yeah, I figured that out when someone broke into my apartment last week. They weren't very subtle about warning me off. Max's head snapped up. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I needed to be sure. She pulled out one final document. This is from Elite Velocity's latest tech development division. They've hired a new genius programmer, Steven Sherman. He's been working on something big, something to do with autonomous vehicles. We already knew they were stealing cars, Max started, but Marina cut him off. This isn't about stealing them. It's about controlling them. She lowered her voice further. Sherman's developed a system that can hack into any vehicle's autonomous driving features. Turn them into remote-controlled weapons if they wanted to. Max thought about the hidden compartments Dustin had discovered, the pattern of car movements across state lines. They're not just moving data, he realized. They're testing the system, using the Ray circuit to perfect their control. And guess who else specializes in automotive software? Marina's eyes met his. Your brother. Before he disappeared, Corey was working on autonomous vehicle security systems. The implications hit Max like a physical blow. If Corey had discovered what Elite Velocity was planning, if he'd tried to stop it. His phone buzzed again, more urgently this time. A text from Victor Browning. Race tonight. Don't be late. Special event planned. Marina saw his expression change. What is it? They're planning something. Tonight. Max stood, gathering the documents. I need copies of all of this. Already made them. She handed him a USB drive. Max! She hesitated. About Chris. Are you sure she's not involved? He gave a grim smile. At this point, I'm not sure of anything, except that my wife has been lying to me since the day we met. As Max left Marina's office, his mind raced with the implications of what he'd learned. His wife wasn't just connected to Elite Velocity. She was a planted asset, groomed by Kennedy years before Max had even met her. Their entire marriage might have been orchestrated as part of Elite Velocity's long game. His burner phone buzzed one more time. Lucia again. McCarthy's making moves. Be careful. Max got into his Ferrari, but didn't start it immediately. Instead, he sat there, thinking about Corey, about Chris, about the web of lies and betrayal that had been woven around him. The rain had started again, drumming on the roof of the car like a countdown to something inevitable. Tonight's race wasn't just a race. With Sherman's autonomous vehicle system in play, it could be a test run for something much bigger. And Max was running out of time to figure out what it was before McCarthy's investigation brought everything crashing down. The race was set for midnight on a stretch of coastal highway north of Boston. Max could feel the tension in the air as he pulled into the gathering of exotic cars, their headlights cutting through the misty darkness. Victor Browning's Lamborghini was already there, its matte black finish seeming to absorb what little light there was. "Max!" Browning called out, waving him over. "Thought you might not make it. McCarthy's boys have been sniffing around, I hear." Max forced a casual smile. "Nothing I can't handle." "Good man." Browning clapped him on the shoulder, but his eyes were calculating. "You're in the second heat tonight." "Against me?" It wasn't a request. Max nodded, understanding the subtext. Browning was testing him, probably prompted by McCarthy's increased attention. "Should be interesting," Max said, matching Browning's intense gaze. "Though these conditions aren't ideal." Browning laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "Life's not about ideal conditions, Max. It's about adaptation. Speaking of which," he gestured toward a group of new faces standing near a cluster of cars. Tech entrepreneurs, Max realized, recognizing some from news coverage of autonomous vehicle developments. Sherman was among them, his laptop open on the hood of a Tesla. "Testing some new features tonight," Browning explained. "Should make things exciting." Before Max could respond, his phone buzzed. McCarthy, watching from somewhere in the darkness. The internal affairs agent had been increasing his surveillance, forcing Max to take greater risks to maintain his cover. The first heat began, two Porsches screaming off into the night. Max used the opportunity to drift closer to Sherman's group, catching fragments of their conversation over the sound of engines. "Neural network's ready," Sherman was saying. "Just needs real-world data. Liability issues if anyone traces. Perfect deniability with the race format." Max's burner phone vibrated. Lucia again. He stepped away to answer it. "We've got a problem," his handler said without preamble. "Local PD got a tip about the race. They're mobilizing." "McCarthy?" "Has to be. He's forcing your hand, Max. If you run, he'll use it against you. If you stay, my cover's blown when the police show up," Max finished. "How long?" 10 minutes, maybe less." Max looked at the gathering of cars, at Sherman's group huddled around their laptops, at Browning watching everything with predatory attention. Running now would confirm every suspicion McCarthy had been spreading about him going rogue. But staying meant risking everything they'd built. The second heat was being called to the starting line. Browning was already walking to his Lamborghini, clearly expecting Max to follow. "I'll handle it," Max told Lucia, ending the call. The next few minutes passed in a blur of engine checks and final preparations. Max could feel Browning watching him, testing his nerve. The night air was thick with exhaust fumes and tension. As they lined up at the makeshift starting line, Max made his decision. He'd race, but he'd lose. Carefully, calculatedly, in a way that would cement his cover while giving him an excuse to help clear the area when the police arrived. The starter raised her arms. In the distance, Max thought he heard sirens, but the sound was lost in the roar of engines as the race began. The coastal road was treacherous in the best conditions. Tonight, with rain-slicked curves and limited visibility, it was a death trap. Max kept pace with Browning through the first series of turns, neither pushing too hard yet. Then Browning made his move, the Lamborghini surging ahead on a straight stretch. Max started to follow, then noticed something odd. The car's movements were too precise, too calculated for the conditions. Sherman's software, he realized. They were testing it tonight, using the race as cover. The implication sent a chill through him that had nothing to do with the weather. The sirens were definitely closer now. Max had seconds to decide. If he warned everyone, he'd be protecting civilians but risking his cover. If he maintained his cover, the resulting chase could endanger innocent lives. His decision was made for him when he saw headlights ahead, a civilian minivan coming around the bend. Browning's Lamborghini was heading straight for it, showing no signs of slowing. Max swerved his Ferrari, deliberately cutting across Browning's path. The move forced both cars to slow, giving the minivan time to pass safely. But it also gave Browning the perfect opportunity to win the race. The sirens were overwhelming now. Police cruisers appeared behind them, lights flashing. Browning shot Max a look through his side window. Not anger, but assessment. "All units, scatter." Browning's voice crackled over their secure radio channel. "Regroup at checkpoint 3. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Cars peeled off in different directions, their drivers well-practiced in escape routes. Browning's Lamborghini accelerated away, its movement still unnaturally precise. Max made a show of following, but deliberately took a route he knew would be blocked. Within minutes, he was hemmed in by police cars, playing the part of the sacrificial distraction perfectly. Through his rearview mirror, he watched the others escape. His phone buzzed one final time. Lucia. "Lion's handling the locals," she said. "Play it cool. This might work in our favor." And somehow it did. Max's apparent sacrifice to help the others escape earned him exactly what he needed: Browning's trust. The next day, he was invited to an inner circle meeting, his loyalty no longer in question. But McCarthy wasn't done. The internal affairs agent moved to arrest Max immediately, claiming the race incident proved his corruption. Only Lucia's intervention, backed by Clay Lyon's authority, prevented it. McCarthy's working with Kennedy, Lucia revealed later, in the safety of their secure meeting spot. This whole internal affairs investigation, it's not official. They're trying to expose your identity to Browning. Max absorbed this news, adding it to the complex puzzle he was assembling. Kennedy, McCarthy, his wife, his brother, all the pieces were connected. He just couldn't see the full picture yet. But he was getting closer. And tonight's race had proven one thing. Elite Velocity's plans went far beyond simple car theft and corporate espionage. With Sherman's autonomous vehicle system, they had the potential to cause chaos on an unprecedented scale. The question was, how much time did he have left to stop them? The midnight air was thick with tension as Max pulled into the abandoned parking lot. His headlights illuminated 5 luxury cars arranged in a semicircle, a welcoming committee that felt more like an execution squad. The Ferrari's engine ticked as it cooled, the sound unnaturally loud in the empty lot. Victor Browning stepped out of his matte black Lamborghini, his usual smooth confidence tinged with something darker. Judge Waller emerged from his Bentley, looking uncomfortable in casual clothes rather than his judicial robes. And there, leaning against a Porsche, was Douglas Kennedy, his former FBI badge replaced by Elite Velocity's private security credentials. "Max," Browning called out, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "So glad you could join us. We have some matters to discuss." Before Max could respond, another car door opened. His heart stopped as Chris stepped out of the Ferrari California, Browning's personal car. She was wearing Browning's jacket over her evening dress, a deliberate statement that hit Max like a physical blow. "I'm sorry it had to be this way," Chris said, but her voice held no real remorse. She was holding a manila envelope. "Are you?" Max kept his voice steady, years of undercover work helping him maintain his composure. "How long, Chris? Was any of it real?" "Define real," she replied, moving to stand beside Browning. "The accounts I managed were real. The money I moved was real. The information I gathered was real." Kennedy pushed off from the Porsche, moving into the light. "She did her job perfectly, Max. Just like she was trained to do. Just like she's been doing since college." The pieces clicked together in Max's mind. Chris's transformation wasn't recent at all. She'd been playing a role from the beginning, planted in his life because of his connection to Corey. "The envelope," Browning said, nodding to Chris. She stepped forward, holding it out to Max. Inside were divorce papers, but Max knew immediately they were more than that. The attached documents included a detailed confession, his name, his signature perfectly forged, admitting to crimes he hadn't committed. The dates aligned perfectly with his undercover work, making it appear he'd gone rogue exactly as McCarthy had been claiming. "This is almost impressive," Max said, keeping his tone light despite the rage building inside him. "How long did it take you to forge these?" "Who said they're forged?" Kennedy smiled. "You'd be amazed what people sign when they trust their spouse to handle the paperwork. Those signatures are all yours, Max, from various documents over the years." Chris was very thorough in her record keeping. Judge Waller cleared his throat. "The papers have already been filed in my court. Once they're processed, the attached confession becomes part of the public record. Your career, your credibility, everything you've built, gone. Unless," Max prompted, knowing there had to be more. "Unless you do exactly what we tell you," Browning said. "We know you've been looking into your brother's disappearance." "Stop. Walk away." Sign these new papers we've prepared, transferring certain assets to specific holding companies. And this all goes away. And if I refuse? Chris stepped forward again, her expression almost pitying. Then not only does your career end in disgrace, but any evidence you've gathered about Corey becomes worthless. Who's going to believe the testimony of a corrupt agent? One last thing. She pulled a photo from her purse and held it out. Max's hands shook as he took it. The photo showed Corey, clearly recent, clearly alive, but the look in his brother's eyes sent chills down his spine. He's alive, Chris said softly. For now. Your choice will determine whether he stays that way. The weight of the photo felt like lead in Max's hands. His brother was alive, but clearly under duress. The timestamp in the corner showed it was taken just days ago. How do I know this is real? Max asked, his voice hoarse. Browning pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and held it up. A live video feed showed Corey in what appeared to be a luxurious room, reading a newspaper. Today's newspaper. Your brother's been quite useful to us, Kennedy said, moving closer. His programming skills, combined with Sherman's innovations. Let's just say the autonomous vehicle project has benefited greatly from his expertise. Max's mind raced. Corey wasn't just alive. He was being forced to work for them. The implications of his brother's skills being used for Elite Velocity's plans made his blood run cold. You have 1 hour to decide, Browning stated flatly. Sign the papers, walk away from everything you've discovered, and both you and your brother get to live comfortable lives. Refuse. He shrugged elegantly. Well, I'm sure you can imagine the alternatives. Judge Waller shifted uncomfortably. The court opens at 9 tomorrow. Whatever you decide, Max, the papers will be processed. One way or another. I'll need time to review everything, Max said, playing for time while his mind worked furiously. You have 1 hour, Browning repeated. Not a minute more. He turned to Chris. Show him what else is in the envelope. Chris pulled out another set of documents. Property transfers, bank account details, corporate registrations. Everything needed to completely entangle Max in Elite Velocity's operations. Once you sign these, she explained, her professional accountant's voice at odds with the personal betrayal of the moment. There's no going back. Your assets, your accounts, everything gets routed through our shell companies. McCarthy's investigation becomes moot because you'll actually be everything he suspects you of being. Elegant, Max admitted, and meant it. They crafted a trap where either choice, signing or refusing, would destroy him. Sign, and he'd become the corrupt Agent McCarthy accused him of being. Refuse, and the forged confession would destroy his credibility and any chance of helping Corey. Thunder rolled overhead, and rain began to fall, drumming on the luxury car's roofs. The sound reminded Max of that first night he'd infiltrated Elite Velocity, when everything had seemed simpler. Back when he thought Chris was just his wife, when he believed Corey was dead, when McCarthy was just another internal affairs agent. Tick-tock, Kennedy said, tapping his watch. Clock's running, Max. Max looked at each face in turn. Browning's calculated confidence. Waller's nervous authority. Kennedy's smug satisfaction. And Chris, his wife, his betrayer, wearing another man's jacket while holding papers designed to destroy him. The rain fell harder as Max stared at the documents in his hands. His brother was alive. Everything else, his career, his marriage, his reputation, seemed secondary to that central fact. But if he signed these papers, he'd be abandoning not just his investigation, but any chance of bringing Elite Velocity to justice. Thunder crashed again, closer this time, as Max faced the most impossible choice of his life. The hour was counting down, and with it, any chance of saving both his brother and himself. The ultimatum hung in the rain-soaked air, heavy with the weight of lives and lies, as Max stood at the crossroads of everything he'd fought for and everything he stood to lose. Thunder crashed overhead as Max stared at the documents in his hands. Browning's ultimatum hung in the air, the rain drumming steadily on luxury car roofs. Then, with deliberate slowness, Max reached into his jacket. I wouldn't, Kennedy warned, his hand moving toward his own weapon. Max's fingers closed around his FBI badge instead of his gun. Actually, he said, his voice carrying clearly despite the rain, I think I would. The badge caught the dim parking lot lighting as he held it up. For a split second, confusion crossed Browning's face. Then headlights blazed to life from every corner of the parking lot, accompanied by the distinctive sound of multiple car doors opening simultaneously. FBI! Nobody move! The shout came from behind a concrete pillar as agents emerged from their hiding spots. But they weren't alone. Detective Marina would step out from behind an unmarked police car, her tactical team fanning out with practiced precision. Boston PD, hands where we can see them. The look of betrayal on Chris's face shifted to something else, fear, as she realized the trap hadn't been for Max at all. She dropped the envelope, reaching for her purse, but Marina was faster. Don't even think about it, Marina warned, her weapon trained steadily on Chris. 5 years I've been building this case. You're not running now. Browning's practiced smoothness cracked. This is absurd. Judge Waller is about to have bigger problems than your case, came a new voice. Clay Lyon emerged from the shadows, looking more like a battle-hardened veteran than a division chief. We've been watching you for months, Your Honor. All those sealed cases, all those convenient rulings. Judge Waller's face had gone ashen. I have judicial immunity. Not for racketeering, Lyon cut him off. Not for conspiracy. And certainly not for kidnapping. Kennedy made his move then, diving toward his Porsche. He almost made it before 2 agents tackled him to the wet pavement. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut was nearly lost in the continuing thunder. The cars, Browning shouted suddenly. Sherman now? Max's eyes widened as he realized what Browning meant. The autonomous system. But before he could finish, the luxury cars surrounding them roared to life, their engines revving. Sherman must have been monitoring remotely, ready to turn their own vehicles into their escape route. Not this time, came Dustin Watkins' voice over a loudspeaker. The tech specialist had set up in a surveillance van, his computers glowing in the darkness. I've been studying your code for weeks. Say goodbye to your backdoor access. One by one, the engines died. Sherman's remote access had been cut off, leaving the vehicles as nothing more than very expensive parking lot decorations. Browning's men tried to scatter, but the parking lot had been surrounded. Marina's tactical team had covered every exit, while FBI agents moved in with practiced efficiency. The operation had been planned down to the smallest detail. You okay? Marina asked Max quietly as her officers took Chris into custody. Max watched his wife being handcuffed, the borrowed jacket falling from her shoulders to the wet pavement. Ask me tomorrow. Your brother, Marina started, is being extracted as we speak, Lyon confirmed, appearing beside them. Another tactical team is hitting the compound in the Berkshires. McCarthy's alleged investigation gave us the perfect cover to put surveillance on all their properties. Speaking of McCarthy, Max spotted the internal affairs agent being led away in handcuffs, his face a mask of fury as he realized how completely he'd been outplayed. How long? Max asked Lyon. How long have you been building this? Since the day you came to me about Corey, Lyon replied. When you said the original investigation felt wrong, I started digging. Found McCarthy's connection to Kennedy, started putting pieces together. Marina's investigation gave us the breakthrough we needed. The rain was easing now as the last of the arrests were made. Evidence teams swarmed the vehicles, particularly interested in Browning's Ferrari with its hidden compartments. Sir, an agent called out. You need to see this. In the Ferrari's trunk, they found a laptop. Dustin hurried over, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he bypassed the security. It's Sherman's control system, he announced. The whole autonomous vehicle hack complete with their planned targets. This isn't just about corporate espionage anymore. They were planning to use this to orchestrate accidents, create chaos. We'll need to coordinate with Cyber Division, Lyon said. Get every autonomous vehicle manufacturer to patch their systems. Max barely heard them. His phone had buzzed with a text from the Berkshires team. Package secure. See him safe. En route. Marina read the message over his shoulder. Go, she said softly. We got this here. Max hesitated, looking at the scene of controlled chaos around them. Browning was being led to a transport vehicle, his usual confidence replaced by cold fury. Judge Waller seemed to have aged years and minutes as he was read his rights. Kennedy was already gone, whisked away to a secure facility where he'd face both his old colleagues and his many betrayals. And Chris, his wife, sat in the back of a police car, her makeup running slightly in the rain, staring straight ahead as though she could deny reality through sheer force of will. Max, Marina touched his arm. Go to your brother. We'll handle the cleanup here. Lion nodded his agreement. I'll send a car. And Max, he paused. Good work. All of it. Even the parts where you didn't know you were helping us build the bigger case. Max managed a tired smile. Just don't take 5 years to tell me about the next secret operation. As he walked away from the scene, Max felt the weight of his badge, real and solid against his chest. The rain had finally stopped, and the first hints of dawn were appearing on the horizon. It wasn't over. There would be interviews, paperwork, trials, and testimony. But for the first time in 5 years, he could see the path forward clearly. His phone buzzed again, 20 minutes out. See him asking for you. Max got into an unmarked FBI vehicle, his mind already racing ahead to the reunion with his brother. Behind him, the parking lot looked like a movie set. Federal agents, police tactical teams, evidence technicians, and a collection of the world's most expensive cars, all frozen in a tableau of justice finally served. He took one last look at the scene through the car's rear window. Marina was coordinating with Lion, her professional demeanor masking the personal investment she'd made in this case. Dustin was supervising the collection of digital evidence, ensuring nothing could be remotely wiped or altered. And somewhere in all the controlled chaos, his soon-to-be ex-wife was beginning to realize just how completely her carefully constructed world had crumbled. The car pulled away, heading toward the rendezvous point where he would finally see his brother again. Max leaned back, closed his eyes, and let out a long breath. The night's rain had washed away years of lies and deception, leaving behind a foundation on which truth could finally be built. Max walked into the secure FBI facility where his brother waited. Corey stood by a window, thinner than Max remembered, his programmer's pallor even more pronounced after years in captivity. But when he turned, his eyes were clear and alert. You took your time, Corey said, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Max crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling his brother into a fierce embrace. For a moment, neither spoke. 5 years of absence and worry and guilt compressed into a single hug. I never stopped looking, Max said finally, his voice rough. I know. Corey stepped back, running a hand through his unkempt hair. I saw the signs. Little irregularities in Elite Velocity's security system. Patterns that didn't quite fit. I knew someone was digging, but I couldn't risk responding. They were watching everything. A gentle knock interrupted them. Marina stood in the doorway, holding a laptop recovered from Browning's Ferrari. Her eyes met Max's briefly before focusing on Corey. Mr. Mason, she said professionally, though Max could hear the emotion she was controlling. We need to talk about what you found. About why they took you. Corey's face tightened, but he nodded. They moved to a conference room where Dustin was already set up, multiple screens displaying code and data streams. It started with a bug, Corey began, his fingers drumming nervously on the table. I was doing contract work on autonomous vehicle systems, standard security audits. But I found something embedded in the core protocols. A backdoor so sophisticated it was practically invisible. Dustin pulled up a section of code. Sherman's work? The foundation of it. Corey leaned forward, pointing at specific lines. I traced it back to Elite Velocity. Realized they weren't just stealing cars. They were compromising the entire autonomous vehicle infrastructure, creating a kill switch they could use to control any car running the infected software. Which is why they needed you, Max said quietly. Corey nodded. Sherman was brilliant with the theoretical work, but he needed someone who understood the practical implementation. When I threatened to expose them, he trailed off, the memory clearly painful. That's when Waller got involved. Marina picked up the thread. He presided over a sealed hearing, where you were supposedly granted immunity in exchange for testimony. But instead, they used it to make me disappear legally, Corey finished. Everything properly documented, all the paperwork in order. On paper, I'd been placed in a witness protection program. In reality, you were their prisoner, Max growled. Collaborator, eventually, Corey admitted, shame coloring his voice. They made it clear what would happen to you if I didn't cooperate. Then Kennedy brought in Chris, and the surveillance net was complete. The mention of his wife made Max flinch. Marina noticed, moving slightly closer to him in silent support. Speaking of Chris, Dustin interrupted, you'll want to see this. He pulled up files from the encrypted thumb drive found in Browning's car. It goes back even further than we thought. She wasn't just Kennedy's asset in college. She was specifically chosen for this operation. Everything, from her placement at the accounting firm to her chance meeting with Max, was orchestrated. Max finished, the full weight of the deception hitting him anew. The evidence was overwhelming. Years of financial records showed how Elite Velocity had used Chris's accounting skills to launder money through seemingly legitimate businesses. Her marriage to Max hadn't just been a surveillance tool. It had provided a layer of legitimacy to her financial dealings. There's more, Marina said softly, sliding over another file. We found this in Judge Waller's private safe. Contingency plans. If anything went wrong, Chris was supposed to use her position as your wife to discredit any investigation you might launch. The divorce papers, the forged confession, they'd been preparing those for years. Max stared at the documents, remembering all the times Chris had asked him to sign something for their joint accounts, their house, their life insurance. Each signature had been carefully collected, stored, and repurposed for their backup plan. I'm sorry, Max, Corey said quietly. When they brought me the newspaper articles about your wedding, I tried to warn you, but by then they had complete control over my communications. It's not your fault, Max assured him, though his voice was strained. None of this is. Dustin cleared his throat. You both need to see this too. He pulled up another file, this one showing the full scope of Elite Velocity's autonomous vehicle plan. They weren't just planning to control individual cars. This was about infrastructure. Imagine being able to cause accidents at will, stop security vehicles from responding to robberies, redirect autonomous cargo trucks. A master key to the entire transportation network, Corey added. And with Judge Waller ensuring any legal challenges were shut down, with McCarthy running interference in law enforcement, they could have held cities hostage, Marina concluded grimly. The implications were staggering. What had started as an investigation into car theft and corporate espionage had uncovered a conspiracy that could have reshaped the balance of power in the criminal underworld. One thing I don't understand, Max said, looking at his brother. Why show themselves now? Why risk the confrontation tonight? Because Sherman's system was ready, Corey explained. The final tests were successful. They needed to ensure you were either completely compromised or completely discredited before they launched their operation. Tonight wasn't just about the divorce papers. It was their last chance to contain the situation before they went live. Marina's phone buzzed. Lyon's team just finished their preliminary search of Elite Velocity's offices. They found a target list. Major financial institutions, government facilities, corporate headquarters. They were planning to demonstrate their capabilities within the week. The room fell silent as the full scope of what they'd prevented sank in. Max looked at his brother, seeing not just the trauma of the past 5 years, but the strength that had helped him survive them. What happens now? Corey asked, suddenly sounding tired. Now, Marina said, her professional tone softening. You both rest. We have safe houses set up. Tomorrow, we start the formal interviews, begin building the case for prosecution. But tonight, she glanced at Max, tonight is for family. Max nodded, grateful for her understanding. As the others began packing up their equipment, he stayed seated beside his brother, neither speaking, but both drawing comfort from the simple fact of being together again. Somewhere in the building, Chris was being processed, her carefully constructed facade finally crumbling under the weight of evidence. Browning, Kennedy, McCarthy, and the others were being housed in separate facilities, their empire of corruption already beginning to collapse. But here, in this quiet room, two brothers sat together, beginning the long process of healing wounds that went far deeper than the physical. The truth had emerged, bringing with it both pain and possibility, both an ending and a beginning. 6 months after the Elite Velocity takedown, Max stood in the federal courthouse, watching as Judge Sarah Chun prepared to deliver her sentencing. The gallery was packed. Journalists, FBI agents, and victims of Elite Velocity's various schemes, all waiting to see justice served. Chris sat at the defendant's table, her designer outfit replaced by practical courtroom attire, her usual confidence diminished but not entirely gone. Throughout the trial, she'd maintained her composure, even attempting to paint herself as another victim of circumstance. "Your Honor," she'd pleaded earlier, her voice carefully modulated to convey remorse. "I was young when Kennedy recruited me. I didn't understand the full scope." "Mrs. Stevenson," Judge Chun had interrupted, using the name that felt like a knife twist in Max's chest. "The evidence shows you were not only fully aware, but actively participating in this conspiracy for over a decade. Your attempts to manipulate this court only demonstrate the behavior pattern described in Agent Lyon's testimony." Max felt Marina's presence beside him as the judge prepared to announce the sentences. Over the months of preparation for trial, their professional partnership had evolved into something deeper, built on a foundation of trust and shared purpose. In the matter of the United States versus Victor Browning, Judge Chun began, her voice carrying clearly through the hushed courtroom. "On the counts of racketeering, conspiracy, corporate espionage, and attempted cyberterrorism, this court sentences you to 30 years in federal prison." Browning's face remained impassive, but his hands clenched on the table before him. "Douglas Kennedy," the judge's voice hardened, "your betrayal of your oath as a federal agent, combined with your role in the kidnapping and coercion of Corey Mason, merits special consideration." 40 years. Kennedy's shoulders slumped slightly, the former agent finally showing the weight of his crimes. "Theodore McCarthy." The judge actually leaned forward for this one. "Your abuse of your position in internal affairs, your conspiracy with a criminal enterprise, and your attempts to obstruct justice reflect a particularly egregious betrayal of public trust." 35 years. One by one, the sentences came down. Judge Waller received 25 years. His judicial career ended in disgrace. Sherman, who had turned state's evidence early and helped patch the autonomous vehicle vulnerabilities, received a reduced sentence of 10 years. Then it was Chris's turn. "Kristen Avery," Judge Chun said, deliberately using her maiden name. "Your actions represent a sophisticated and long-term criminal enterprise. The evidence shows you were not merely complicit, but instrumental in Elite Velocity's financial operations. Moreover, your calculated deception in your personal life demonstrates a level of manipulation that this court finds particularly disturbing." Max felt Marina's hand slip into his, offering silent support. 20 years, the judge pronounced, with no possibility of parole for 15. As the sentences were read into the record, Max's mind drifted to earlier that morning. He and Corey had been working on the Mustang, their father's old '67 that had been found in one of Elite Velocity's warehouses. The process of restoring it had become a form of therapy for both brothers, each turn of the wrench helping to rebuild not just the car but their relationship. "Agent Stevenson?" Max blinked, realizing Judge Chun was addressing him directly. "The court wishes to acknowledge your perseverance in pursuing this case, despite personal cost. Your dedication to justice, even when faced with profound personal betrayal, exemplifies the highest standards of federal law enforcement." After the sentencing, Max found himself in Lyon's office, where his former boss was outlining changes to the Bureau's undercover protocols. "Your case is already being used in training," Lyon explained, sliding over a new manual. "We're implementing additional safeguards, better oversight of internal affairs investigations. The next generation of agents will learn from both our successes and our failures." "And McCarthy's old cases?" "Under review," Lyon confirmed. "Marina's team has been instrumental in identifying other potentially compromised investigations." Speaking of Marina, Max glanced at his watch. They had dinner plans, their first real date that wasn't related to the case or the trial. 6 months of working together had evolved into something neither had expected but both welcomed. As he left the federal building, Max passed the parking lot where the final confrontation had taken place. The luxury cars were long gone, auctioned off to benefit a victims' compensation fund. All except one, the Mustang that now sat in his garage, its restoration a symbol of healing and renewal. His phone buzzed, a text from Corey. Got the new carburetor installed. Ready when you are? Max smiled, remembering how his brother's eyes had lit up when they'd found the car. The past 5 years had left their marks on Corey, but working on the Mustang had helped him find his way back to himself. His testimony had been crucial in the trial, his detailed knowledge of Sherman's system helping prosecutors demonstrate just how close Elite Velocity had come to implementing their plan. Marina was waiting by her car. Ready? She asked, her smile warming him more than any Ferrari's heated leather seats ever had. Ready, Max confirmed, taking her hand. They had dinner reservations at a small Italian place. Nothing fancy, nothing fake, just real people sharing real connections. As they drove away from the courthouse, Max caught a glimpse of his reflection in the window. He saw a different man than the one who had first infiltrated Elite Velocity. Older, perhaps, but also more complete. The betrayals had left their scars, but they had also led him to this moment, to the truth about his brother, to a partner he could trust, to a future built on honesty rather than deception. The Elite Velocity case would be studied for years to come, not just for its complexity, but for its lessons about trust, loyalty, and the importance of maintaining one's moral compass in a world of shifting allegiances. Max would help teach those lessons, sharing his experiences with new agents while continuing his own journey of recovery and growth. The Mustang waited in his garage, a testament to the enduring bonds of family. Marina's hand was warm in his, a promise of trust renewed. And somewhere in his heart, the wounds of betrayal were slowly healing, replaced by the understanding that sometimes life's worst moments lead to its greatest gifts. Max Stevenson drove toward his future, leaving behind the world of luxury cars and elaborate deceptions, embracing instead the simple truth that had guided him all along. Justice, though sometimes slow, was worth every sacrifice made in its pursuit. Epilogue, 10 years later. The Federal Correctional Institution in Danbury, Connecticut, looked almost peaceful. Detective Marina Wood Stevenson watched as a guard buzzed open the visitor's gate. She wasn't here on official business. This was personal. Chris Avery had aged noticeably in the decades since her sentencing. The designer clothes and perfect makeup had been replaced by prison-issued garments and a face that showed every minute of her 15-year mandatory sentence. She sat across from Marina in the visitor's room, her once confident posture now carrying the weight of consequences. Max isn't coming, is he? Chris asked, though she already knew the answer. You know he's not, Marina replied evenly. He hasn't responded to any of your letters in 8 years. Chris's fingers twisted together on the table. Victor? The question was barely a whisper. Still serving his 30 years in Colorado. Though I hear he's not quite the power player he used to be. Even in prison, Marina allowed herself a small smile. Amazing how quickly a man's influence fades when his money and connections dry up. The former Mrs. Stevenson flinched. Her own fall from grace had been particularly hard. The evidence presented at trial had destroyed any chance of claiming ignorance or coercion. The detailed records of her decades-long deception, her calculated manipulation of Max, her willing participation in Elite Velocity schemes, it had all painted a picture of someone who had chosen power and wealth over basic human decency. I heard, Chris hesitated. I heard he got remarried. Marina's wedding ring caught the fluorescent light. 3 years ago. Small ceremony. Corey was best man, and they finished the Mustang? A hint of the old manipulation crept into Chris's voice, fishing for information. I'm not here to give you updates about Max's life. Marina cut her off. I'm here because you claim to have information about other Elite Velocity operations that were never uncovered. The ploy was obvious. Chris had been trying to bargain for privileges or possibly a sentence reduction. But Marina had learned from Max's experience. Never trust a word from someone who had made deception their life's work. I thought. Chris's facade cracked slightly. I thought after all this time, maybe what? Max would forgive you? The FBI would reduce your sentence? Marina leaned forward. You didn't just betray a husband, Chris. You betrayed the entire justice system. You helped criminals exploit innocent people. You watched a man's brother be held captive for 5 years and did nothing. Chris's eyes dropped to the table. The years in prison had stripped away her sophisticated veneer, revealing the calculated coldness beneath. Her attempts to manipulate her way to a lighter sentence had failed spectacularly when other inmates' testimony revealed she was still trying to run cons from inside. "How's Kennedy doing?" Chris asked, changing tactics. "Dying?" Marina's response was blunt. "Cancer. He'll likely spend his last days in the prison infirmary." McCarthy, too. Though his problems are more about the other inmates' feelings toward corrupt law enforcement. The news seemed to age Chris another decade in moments. Kennedy had been her mentor, the one who had sculpted her from a college student into a sophisticated criminal. Now he would die behind bars, his legacy one of corruption and betrayal. "You know," Marina continued, "Max teaches at Quantico now. Uses the elite velocity case as a study in both sophisticated criminal enterprises and the psychology of betrayal. Your methods, your manipulations, they're literally a textbook example of what agents need to watch for." The irony clearly stung. Chris had prided herself on her intelligence, her ability to stay ahead of law enforcement. Now she was a cautionary tale, her techniques dissected in FBI training sessions. And Browning? Chris's voice had grown smaller. "Have you heard? Still trying to run his empire from inside, from what we hear. Not having much success." Marina allowed herself a small smile. Turns out his loyal associates weren't so loyal once the money stopped flowing. His ex-wife got everything in the divorce. She's quite the philanthropist now. Actually, funds programs for victims of white-collar crime. The visitors' room had grown more crowded as other inmates received their Sunday visitors. The contrast was stark. Families trying to maintain connections across the divide of imprisonment, children drawing pictures for incarcerated parents. Chris sat alone, but for Marina, her own family having disowned her after the truth emerged. "You want to know what really brought me here?" Marina said finally. "Max and I are expecting a little girl, and I wanted to look you in the eye to really understand how someone could build an entire life on lies. How you could share a bed with a man for years while plotting his destruction." Chris's composure cracked completely. "It wasn't, at the beginning, it was just business. Kennedy said we needed someone inside the bureau. Max was perfect, talented but not too ambitious, connected to Corey but not actively investigating, lonely enough to be an easy target. But you didn't count on him being a genuinely good person, did you?" Marina pressed. "That's what really destroyed your plan. Max's fundamental decency, his loyalty, his determination to find the truth about his brother. You couldn't corrupt that, no matter how hard you tried." The guards announced visiting hours were ending. Marina stood, gathering her coat. "You know what the saddest part is?" she said, looking down at the woman who had once been the picture of sophisticated success. "Max would have loved you, the real you if there ever was one. Instead, you chose to be a fiction, a tool for criminals. And now, that's all you'll ever be." Outside, the autumn air was crisp and clean. Marina's hand rested briefly on her growing belly as she walked to her car. Max would be home soon. He split his time between teaching at Quantico and consulting on complex cases. They'd moved to a quiet suburb, close enough to where Corey had settled with his own family that the brothers could work on the Mustang most weekends. The car was done now, restored to better than original condition. Sometimes Marina would watch the brothers working on it, seeing how the simple act of turning wrenches and discussing engine timing had helped heal wounds that therapy alone couldn't touch. Her phone buzzed. A text from Corey. "Baby's first car seat installed in a Mustang. Though Max insists we need to upgrade the safety features." Marina smiled. The brothers had become fiercely protective of family, both biological and chosen. Their Sunday dinners had become a tradition, often including Clay Lyon, now FBI Deputy Director, and Dustin Watkins, who had parlayed his role in the elite velocity case into a prestigious position heading the Bureau's new Autonomous Systems Security Division. Even Judge Chun was a regular guest, having bonded with the extended family during the long trial. Her harsh sentencing of the elite velocity conspirators had set precedents for similar cases across the country. Marina's car passed the federal building where she now headed the organized crime task force. The elite velocity case had accelerated her career, but it was her subsequent work in reforming investigative procedures that had earned her real respect in law enforcement circles. Sherman, who had received a reduced sentence for his cooperation, was now working under strict supervision, helping government agencies protect against the very types of systems he had once helped create. His testimony had led to improved security protocols across the autonomous vehicle industry. The former Elite Velocity headquarters had been converted into a regional cybercrime center. Marina enjoyed the poetry of that, the place that had once housed so much corruption, now dedicated to fighting it. She pulled into their driveway just as Max was getting home. He looked relaxed, at peace in a way that had taken years to achieve. The childhood picture of him and Corey that had once sat on his undercover apartment's dresser now had a place of honor in their living room, joined by new photos of happier times. "How was she?" Max asked quietly as they embraced. He never said Chris's name anymore. "Exactly what you'd expect," Marina replied. "Still trying to manipulate, still unable to understand why it doesn't work." Max nodded, his hand joining hers over their unborn daughter. "Some people can't change, but some things." He looked at their home, at the Mustang in the garage, at the life they'd built. Some things change for the better. Inside, Marina saw the latest course materials he'd prepared for Quantico. The Elite Velocity case study had been expanded, now incorporating elements of psychology, financial forensics, and cybersecurity. A new generation of agents would learn from both the tactics and the human elements of the investigation. Later that night, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Marina thought about the contrast between Chris's sterile prison visiting room and the warm, lived-in comfort of their home. Max's phone buzzed occasionally with updates from his students or questions from Corey about the Mustang's latest upgrades. Normal things. Real things. The ghost of betrayal had faded, replaced by the substance of genuine love and trust. In the end, that was the true justice. While Chris, Browning, and their conspirators lived in concrete boxes, surrounded by the consequences of their choices, their intended victims had built something authentic and lasting. The Elite Velocity case had taught the law enforcement community about sophisticated criminal enterprises, but its deeper lesson was about the power of truth over deception, of genuine connections over manufactured ones. As Marina felt her daughter kick, she smiled, knowing that this new life would grow up surrounded by people who had learned those lessons the hard way, and who would make sure she understood the true meaning of loyalty, love, and justice. In the garage, the restored Mustang gleamed, its classic lines a testament to the patience required to rebuild something broken into something beautiful. Like the car, the people touched by the Elite Velocity case had emerged from their ordeal transformed, some broken beyond repair, others restored to even greater strength than before. The sun set on another day in their hard-won happiness, while in prisons across the country, the architects of Elite Velocity's betrayals watched their empires crumble and their influence fade, leaving them with nothing but time to contemplate the true cost of their deceptions. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.